Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am with Michael Larner of Larner Wines. We are in the town of Los Olivos at the tasting room, charming little town here. And Michael, welcome and tell us about Larner Wines.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. We're a state vineyard that was founded back in 1999 as a vineyard, and then we started making our own wine in 2009 from the estate. About 10% of the vineyard at the time, and then if you fast forward to today, I think we're sitting at around 25% of the vineyard for our estate production that we pour here in Los Olivos. And basically, we are a Rhone-focused sort of production, mostly Syrah, which is 23 of our 34 acres are planted to Syrah. We have 6 acres of Grenache, 2 acres of Mourvedre, 2 acres of Viognier, and 1.5 acres of Malvasia Bianca. That's our only little outlier from the Rhone varieties.
Fantastic. And your vineyards are located in Ballard Canyon.
Yes, so I'm one of the co-founders of Ballard Canyon AVA, American Viticultural Area, which we actually found we started the process in 2010, and we actually founded the AVA in 2013. It was approved by the government. And so that meant that we basically could go back and label any wine that was not previously labeled. It was basically unfinished, whether it was in barrel or bottle had not been labeled. So we were one of the first to actually label with a Ballard Canyon designate 2011 Estate Syrah.
Wow, and you have a special bottle as well, don't you?
Exactly. That was kind of something that we differentiate ourselves to. We're a very small AVA. It's quite fascinating. I think our total square footage is about 6,000 acres plus or minus, and then of that 6,000 acres, only about 700 are planted to vines currently, and of that 700, we figure somewhere between 3 to 350 are planted to Syrah. So that was sort of our chosen champion. So going forward, we decided to not only create a sort of a unique co-branding effect on our bottle, but we also pegged it strictly to Syrah. So the idea is that the Ballard Canyon is embossed in the actual glass. It is a bottle that is used throughout the other production producers like Beckman, Stoltman, Rusak, Harrison Clark, myself, Kimsey. And so we all use the same bottle, same mold. So you see Ballard Canyon in that glass, but then we can still, we have our individual branded labels on that. But we only use it on Syrah. So that was our way to sort of differentiate. Not only are we a very unique AVA, but at the same time, we are trying to champion Syrah in America.
Fantastic. And what is your total case production?
I'm currently with Larner, the estate, probably about 1,400 cases. So quite small in California standards.
And where are your wines available? Do they have national reach?
Unfortunately, no. That'd be great. Working on that. As a generational business, so probably my kids will have something to do. We're basically mostly in California. Distribution is throughout California for any retail wholesale. But everything else is directly through our website or mailing list, those kind of things. So I always kind of joke with people that come to visit us that if you see one of our wines in Boston, New York, or Florida, it's because a wine club member brought it to dinner, because we do not ship into those states currently.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully people will find your wines by buying it online and shipping it. So what is one of your first memories relevant to wine?
That's a good question. So, it's a funny story. My mother and father moved us as a family to Italy when we were kids. Probably my age was somewhere between 9 and 10. And my mother opened up a business. My father was a cinematographer making a film in Italy, so that was the reason we went there, because it was a long-term contract. So I wasn't looking at wine, but subconsciously, at every dinner table, at every meal, everywhere we were in Italy, there was salt, pepper, and wine.
Yes. And
so it was so sort of habitual that you're always seeing it. And there was, of course, you're having good times, gregarious times, people are eating. And so that I've always associated that as like, hey, this is just part of a natural dinner. When you come back to America and you're looking at the table and it's like salt, pepper, and ketchup, you're like, what happened? What did we do wrong? But the idea is that it was something that was a staple, that was part of their meal. And so it was never taboo. It was never like, what is that weird substance? It was just like, hey, that's part of the meal. So I think when my folks later on, came to my sister and I, and of course we were 21 at this point, but they came to us and said, look, we're thinking about planting a vineyard. It's been a lifelong dream of ours. So they're the brainchild behind it. And they looked at it and said, okay, we want some help. We need, are you guys interested? Because this could be a legacy thing that goes down from generation to generation. We trusted them. They raised us well. But also it wasn't a foreign concept, and having had that experience, that multicultural international experience, it distances yourself to think that, this is alcohol. It's not. There's a reason for different types of alcohol and uses for different types of alcohol. And so for me, it was always like, hey, this makes total sense. That sounds great. And being a geologist prior to winemaking, I was like, look, do I got to stay outdoors? Do I got to be with Mother Nature? Do I got to be, yes, farming's a completely different animal than geology.
Sure. But
at the same time, it's like it's still in that same realm. And so we were really excited to jump in on this project. And so I think for me, like that memory of seeing that dinner table with the wine, whether it was a Chianti or Barolo or whatever they were having, even at a young age, just left that impression like this is something that I want to sort of propagate and sort of champion for our family in this part of the world.
Fantastic. So fast forward, you've been able to drink a lot of great wine. Is there a particular wine, I'm sure there are many, but is there a particular wine that stands out as one of those wines that was kind of that aha moment to, I don't know whether it was wine in general or wine you wanted to make or some sort of aha moment, and what was the wine and the occasion?
Yeah, so that's I've had a lot of great wines for sure, and I'm very blessed to try those wines, and I love trying different wines and exploring. I would say that my sort of aha moment or sort of coming to Jesus was actually when I was at Vineyards. There was a Gaia 100 years retrospective, and Angelo Gaia was presenting this at Verona Fiere. My sister, wife, and I were at this tasting, and we tasted through, memory doesn't serve me correct, but it's talking about 10 wines, let's say, plus or minus. And I think one of them was like early 1900s. Then we got into, and he brought out like a range of not just classic Barolo and Barbaresco, but also, as you know, Gaia does some very unique stuff that are not classic, Nebbiolo. So, Cabernet, Merlot, these kind of things. And so they opened up a bottle of 1997 Spers, which is basically a cab. I think it's 100% cab. And I tried that wine, and it really changed my whole perspective, because I'm trying a Bordeaux variety grown in Piedmont, but it's a fascinating wine. It was amazing, great tasting, and it was old. And so it kind of made you think, like, wait a minute, okay, there is some truth and validity to what he's doing and pushing to be a pioneer in a region that, even though it's well known for something, you can still emerge with something different and amazing. And for me, that was like, okay, this is because I started to look back at myself and think, well, I'm growing Syrah in California, and the Rowan Rangers are sort of flabby. We're not getting enough traction. But when you try one like that, you're like, you know what? There's still hope for me. I can champion something and have faith in it.
And that's why you're championing Syrah and Grenache.
Yeah, exactly. Through Ballard, yeah.
So if we were to come to your home and go into your cellar, what kind of wines would we find in there? Would we find just a lot of Italian wine?
No, yeah. So to preface that, yes, my sister is the wine advocate critic for Italy. So we do get a couple of bottles here and there, thanks to her. It's funny. We have a good mixture. We have, quite a bit of Australian. I was very smitten with Australian wines when my wife and I traveled around in 2015, when we basically went to all the different regions, Barossa, Coonawarra, and I pronounce them even the way I do in English. They pronounce it differently. Funny story on the plane. Somebody's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Barossa." "Where?" "Barossa." And I'm like, "That's where you grow all your grapes." He's like, "Oh, the Barossa." I'm like, "Oh my god." But anyway, so we have quite a bit of Australian wine. We have quite a bit of French. I had the chance to work for Gigal in the Rhone, and so stocked up on the cellar, but also was very smitten with a lot of the wines from that area, especially the Northern Rhone, Côte-Rôtie, and then also went down to Gigondas, Vaquera. So there's that, and there's a handful of Châteauneuf-du-Papes. I would say probably 25% of the cellar is actually our clients' wines that we've kept basically from inception. So the first harvest in 2002, made by other clients. We have random bottles of wineries like Kenneth Crawford, Kayana, all these guys that have been buying fruit from us forever. So we have a lot of these old library selections that we can pull out and taste and see how people did with our wine or our fruit.
Mm-hmm. So when you are drinking right now from your cellar, is there anything in particular drinking really well that you opened lately?
Yeah, we kudos to my friends Mark Horvath and Joey Gramere. They no longer make Kenneth Crawford, but when they made it, they made some great wines. And the 2007 Grenache we had the other night was stellar. It was showing really well, considering it's 12 years old, but it still had that fresh vibrancy. Of course, it's from our state, so I'd love to take credit for that. But but they were, those are really talented winemakers, and I think they just synergistic worked out. And I think that a lot of the wines in 2007 to me seem really wines that what they call French vin de garde, like something you can age well. And I don't think everybody caught on to that early on with 2007. So when I tried that vintage, I was like, hey, this is spot on. This is terrific. Big fan of that. We did our 20th anniversary party, actually, so we were really excited. This is our 20th anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you, of growing wine grapes, and 10th anniversary of making wine. And we actually invited all of our clients from inception, folks like Andrew Murray, Bob Lindquist, to come to the barn and just share wine. And it was really fun to see people bring older vintages, and we try them and talk about them. And so it was nice to see Mark Horvath there to tell him that, hey, we just tried your 2007, it was rocking. He brought an 05, which is just as good, but I was a little more partial to the 07. So.
I'm going to have to go look and see if I have any 07s at home.
Yeah.
So you're a big champion of the Rhone varieties of Syrah and Grenache, but do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Ooh, that is a tough one. That perfect variety is going to be where it's growing. To me, I guess the way to answer that is every variety hits somebody in their heart in a different way. And, when I go up to Napa and I visit my friends from Davis, I love trying Cabernet, but I'm much partial to one area, the Rutherford. I love that dusty tannin kind of character. Does that make it perfect? No, because, it's missing a couple other components too. Like they're not usually overly fruity. They don't have a lot of beautiful sort of softness in the mouth because they're a little bit more aggressive. So I think I'd answer that by saying what I make is Syrah, because what I love about it is it has, and I don't want to skew my words, but it has a masculine and a feminine side to it. It has a soft and a bold side to it. And that's what I love about it. It's a wine to me that offers many different components to different people. The boldness comes through the spice, the pepper spices, the tannin structure, the dark color, and getting into some of the what they call the sinister side of Syrah, like the leather, the asphalt, so you envision this guy riding a Harley, right? But then you got this more sort of feminine side, which is that blue fruits, the floral component, that is elegant and almost like velvety. So, not the same image. And so that's why I love that variety, because it does well in many different parts of the world, but it only showcases that at full spectrum of all that fruit and that spice and that leather and all that in certain areas. And for sure you see that in parts of the Rhone, and you see it in Ballard Canyon. I think there are probably a couple places you could see it, So I think that's why I go back to like probably the best varieties where it's growing best.
Absolutely.
You know, so and I have a hard time with certain varieties that I think because they're so indicative of where they come from that they're really hard to reproduce elsewhere. So that's fine. You know, like Nebbiolo is a wonderful variety, but I mean, don't try to do it in California. You see the stuff coming out of Italy is just phenomenal compared to what we do out here. So, you know, I would say Nebbiolo is a perfect variety for that area, you know, but it's not one that can transcend the globe, you know, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question.
No,
maybe I'm just
that's your answer.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll give you another question. Let's see if you dodge this one.
Okay.
What's your opinion on wine critics and scores? And I say that knowing that your sister is a wine critic.
Yeah. So I have a lot of opinions on this. This is my sister's territory, the turf. You know, look, it's wonderful that somebody can take a system, whether it's stars, thumbs ups, 90 out of 100, whatever, a point scale, that can convey to the consumer fast enough or in a very easy fashion, hey, this wine's good. You and I both know when you look at those scores, the range is bogus because nobody publishes anything under 70, right? And so if you made vinegar, what does that score, right?
Right.
And so really the range is most likely going to be between, you know, upper 70s, most likely 80s to 100, right? So where I think scores come in useful are for, I think, two types of folks. The collectors, those that want to buy the wine, sit on them, maybe sell them in the future as a prospect for increase in value, or just generally want to collect it because they think, wow, this is a one of a kind wine and I want to have that in my collection. Or the folks that, you know, have the faith or trust that particular critic. It reminds me of the old days when you'd go down to Sam Goody and be like, I want to watch a movie tonight. I don't know what to rent. So you go to the employee picks and then you look at them all and you're like, you know, yeah, this guy's crazy. This person liked Caddyshack and liked this movie, so they're into slapstick, and I kind of like slapstick, so I've never seen that movie, but they recommend it. I'll give it a try. And so that's where I see the critics can be very useful to say, listen, I've had the fortunate, I'm talking as a critic, I've had the good fortune to try all these wines and tell you what I think of them. So me coming in saying, I haven't tried that wine, but I trust your palate. So I'd be interested in trying that wine to see if I agree with you. So I think that's really important. Whether they are, you know, 100 points or 99 points, that gets into the minutia. You know, to me, I've had the pleasure of having wines that are low score but extremely tasteful. And that actually benefits sometimes because then you realize it's not overpriced, right? You know, so
and not sold out,
right? Exactly. You're like, so I think you know, you take it all with a grain of salt. It's not always going to hit your mark, but when you look at that score, it's just a very easy way to say, okay, I don't know anything about it, but one thing I do know is that somebody else liked it, so that's good. A lot of us are motivated by price point and label, so those are other things that you're looking at, you know, where it's on the shelf and all that kind of stuff. So all that, I think all of that comes into the components to sort of, you know, help you make that decision. The hard part's when you go to Costco and you look at the wine and it's like, oh, it scored 98 points, but that was the other vintage, not the one they're selling, right? So where are you going with this, right? You know,
it doesn't really help you.
Yeah, I know, exactly. You're like, it was good, but you know, did they change? You know, but I think it's so. My sister being a critic, I have tremendous respect for what she does, and I have tremendous respect for how many wines she tasted. She tasted 4,573 wines last year.
Wow.
And that's awesome, but at the same time, it's so daunting and very scary for me because it means you become a machine. You're just like, you're not having the hedonistic part. And so if a wine critic score is taking away your hedonistic pleasure of the wine, then that's bad, you know? And so that's where I think like people kind of get, you know, they look at a wine, they're like, oh, 88, I'm not going to like that. And actually you may love it. And you didn't approach it that way. So I think you have to take it all with a grain of salt.
Absolutely. So speaking of that hedonistic side or maybe taking the number out of it, for somebody who hasn't tasted Larner wine, what do you think they're missing out on?
I think they're missing out on a couple of things. One is a very beautiful expression of Syrah that's grown in Ballard Canyon, California. Two, the ability for me to take my worldly travel, my worldly experiences of making wine in Italy, making wine in France, but then dialing it into the estate and saying this is what's going to showcase and represent our land the best. So I think that if I were to try to coax somebody in to come and taste the wine, with my little rubber finger standing by the side of the street, would be listen, try wines that that not just because we're small production, not because we're family run, but and organically farmed. Those are great things. But I think that the fact that I'm bringing this unique aspect to the winemaking in my style, which is consistent throughout the vintages and consistent to what our land provides. And, so one of the beautiful things when you try my Syrah in a vertical fashion, so if you're trying a Syrah from 11, 12, and 13, which we were able to do at our 20th anniversary party, you get the baseline. There's certain things that are just omnipresent, bold, spice, minerality, these kind of things. But then the nuances of the vintage come out just a little bit here and there. And I love that. And I think that's what's so amazing. And that's what differentiates me from anybody who's on the grocery store shelf. Because they're marketing the opposite model. When you open Kendall Jackson's Vintner Reserve Chardonnay, it has to taste the same every time. Even in bad vintages, it has to taste the same. You come to me, I don't want it to taste the same. I want you to see the differences and explore those nuances with me. And that's what I think I would want people to say, wow, this is so cool. I can actually see some variation in this. It's a slight amount, but it's enough that you're like, wow, I can see the difference between 11, 12, and 13. I like them all, but I can see that difference. And I think that's what you want to play to.
Yeah. So if space aliens were to land on your property, which of your wines would you want to present to them?
So I'll tell you a funny story. My neighbor thinks they're space aliens. He has this farm called Chalk Hill Farms, and we always laugh. We're like, what are you farming? Rocks? Because he's got nothing out there. But he once told me that aliens landed on the property and took him in. And the best part is his last name is Human. So we thought that's very appropriate that they found the human subject. So what would I pour for them? That is a good question.
Yeah, they wander over to your property.
And they came over and said, okay, we're done doing tests. We need a drink. God, that's a good question. I would probably pour for them something that I don't make all the time. Probably because I'm afraid they're going to do tests on me. I made a dessert wine out of Malvasia. We call it Larner. And it's kind of a pun because it's solar and then Larner put together. And it's a passimento of Malvasia. And when I finished making that wine, it floored me because it had this beautiful sort of Vinsanto characteristics, really rich acidity, and honeysuckle notes, all these kind of things. And it was my first foray into making a sticky. And so I was really excited about making that wine because, most everything I make is dry table wine. And so I would try to show that to say, look, this is something nobody else is going to try, right? So if you're going to put me under the microscope, here's something that nobody else is going to try.
Are you going to make more sticky?
Yeah, that's one of those things if the vintage permits. So it's based on yield. It's based on, how we see the fruit at the end of the harvest. Because it's an passimento, we're always concerned about any issues like mildew or rot, because that will not be beneficial in a drying rack style. So the fruit has to be quite pristine because we're actually picking it, then bringing it to the winery and putting it on basically mats. So it's a lot of handwork. So we don't want to crush the berries or anything like that because then you just promote vinegar production. So it's a lot of handwork, and I think that's probably why I would give it to the youngins. I worked my butt off on this.
I like that. So
spare me.
Well, you're assuming they're not friendly. They can be very friendly.
True. We can all, That's right.
So you were saying before that if you were to taste 3 of your wines, 11, 12, and 13, that you would see vintage variation, maybe a nuance. How much variation do you see from year to year, from one given vintage to another? Do you see similarities? Do you see things repeating themselves, or do you see a real disparate year to year in a place like this?
So, the key, I think, to becoming like a Cru vineyard, one that is recognized for quality and consistency, to me boils down to that the major components, the building blocks of that wine are the same. And the tannin, the color, the fruit tones, and all that kind of stuff usually are within a very tight class, very, very tight knit together. The nuances I'm talking about are like those minutia stuff. It's, like, wow, I get, a little bit of bacon in this, or candied bacon, versus like, the other year we got like char, like a steak or something like that. So that kind of stuff will vary pretty much every year, just the minutia stuff. What really skews the data for us is when in California, as you know, like, we have really consistent weather. I mean, the biggest argument we have is it 82 or 83 today, right?
It's true.
I mean, so compared to when I've worked in Europe, that's where you have, really amplified variances, where you can have hail destroy a crop in Montalcino, right? So you start to think about vintages a lot more in Europe. Where in America, we're always like, yeah, well, it was a good vintage. To me, it's always a good vintage. It was just never like very catastrophic. But having said that, the other thing that I know is where we are situated in Santa Barbara County. We're an inland desert. I mean, we're basically our vineyard 17 miles from the Pacific, but our average rainfall is 13 inches. So when we get droughts, that's when we see a larger amplification of the building blocks get a little bit disturbed. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example of 2013 or 15, very hot vintages throughout the entire growing season. So the building blocks became fruity. We lost pepper. We lost that sort of, we become a little bit more alcoholic, a little more glycerol, and a little bit more fruity. So that's when, as a winemaker, I have to say, okay, well, wait a minute. Okay, I can see there's going to be an issue here. So let me try to figure out ways to tweak it a little bit in the winery to try to steer it back on track. And what I mean by that is, so like we started using Russian oak in 2013 to beef up the pepper spices, because Russian oak to me gives a lot of pepper spices, like a cigar box with pepper in it. And so that replaced what normally would come from the vineyard because it was so hot. And so there are things that I can do, but I also know fundamentally the building blocks are coming from the vineyard. So I can try to sort of complement it. I can try to help it, but I know I can't replace it. And so when I go back and try the 13 or the 15, I'm like, these are big wines. And that's great for California. People love that.
Right.
For me, it's like, well, it's still big. I mean, I would like to see it a little bit more throttled back. Alcohol is a little bit higher than usual that I make, but also more fruit forward. And the funny thing is, when I say that, people think, oh, it's a light wine. No, these are dark, massive wines, but they have more of the fruit tones in their structure than they do compared to previous vintages like 14 or 17, where you have pepper and tannin and age-worthy characteristics. So I think they're both very interesting, bold wines, but I see that that's when you change your building blocks into a different sort of realm of, okay, we're much leaning towards one side,
So when you have an estate property and you're living on the property, you're walking through the vineyards. When you're walking through the vineyards every day, do you speak to your vines? Do you talk to them? And if so, what do you say to them?
Right, yeah. How do I answer that without you thinking I'm crazy? No, I mean, we have 33,000 vines on the entire ranch. I think
each one intimately.
I think between my mother and myself, I think we've probably touched each one of them in some way, shape, or form. I don't profess to be a grape whisperer or anything like that, but what I do know is that I can look at, having grown this fruit for 20 years, specific to my estate. Not if you take me and plot me in another vineyard, I'm going to be a little bit of fish out of water. Mm-hmm. But on my estate, even just walking down the row, I have a really good communication with the vines. They tell me a story, which is basically how they're feeling. Do they need more water? Do they need less water? How are their nutrients? What's the yield look like? Are there going to be any issues with shatter? The major components that we're looking for in phenological growth throughout the growing season. And they can communicate that, and I can understand that language. So I'm very proud of that, and I feel like that is something that is hard to learn, and hard to convey. So when I look at my kids, I'm like, start learning the language, right? But they'll probably do it in a different way, which is fine. But I have scientific equipment to back me up. We have moisture probes. We do petiole analysis, leaf blade analysis all the time to calibrate me, to be like, wow, I didn't, like if I look at a block, I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing a little yellowing in here. I feel like it needs more nitrogen. You get those results back. You're like, yep, I was right. It needs a little more nitrogen. So there are ways to learn that language and train. But so I think ultimately, it's a silent conversation.
Telepathic.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, you just start to look at them and you start to realize grapevines are amazing because they can tell you certain things simply by their leaf angle, what they do when they're looking at the sun. If they turn away like a sunflower, they're getting too much sun. They close their stomata. They don't want to lose, they don't want to respire and lose their acid and their water and all those kind of things. So you can kind of get a sense of it. Looking at their tendrils, are they limp? Okay, they need more water. These kind of things. So you can kind of get a sense quick enough. The tricky part is you have that communication, but then you say, okay, how fast can I answer that? What they need? Mm-hmm. Because if it's nutrients, it's going to take some time for me to fertilize organically to get that food. So it's like a 2.5 week process.
Right.
And that's the hard part is when you're farming. There are some things you can do immediately, and there's some things that take a little bit of time for you to integrate. So when I'm like right now when I'm walking through the vineyards in the winter, I'm looking at because all the leaves are falling off. I can see the shoot, the cane thickness. I can see how tall they were, and I can say, okay, I have some issues in these blocks. I think they need a little bit more growth. So how am I going to accomplish that? What's the problem? Is it soil? So currently, right now, we're actually targeting a couple of blocks that we're going through and ripping and disturbing the soil by breaking up because we feel like it's been compacted, and the compaction is sort of being detrimental to the root growth. Mm-hmm. So, okay, this we'll treat that way. Over here, well, this probably just needs good old-fashioned compost or fertilizer or something like that. So we try to address each need as we can see. And then again, use the science to back me up on that. So we run soil pits. We run basically an ATV can run through with a electromagnetic resource. It's basically like a giant magnet, but it's like looking at the differences in soil. Uh-huh. And so then we can say, okay, well, that makes total sense. Like the pH here is off, and compared to this block, and we see the canopy is completely different. So we need to go work on changing the pH through gypsum or something like that.
So in some ways, you can tell certain signs that will determine what that harvest is going to be because you're monitoring this throughout the whole season, and you're in tune with your vines.
That's what you think as a farmer. I can tell what's going to happen, but then you do have what's going to happen with the weather going forward. How fast are things going to ripen? So you have a utopian idea of where things are going, because all you can do is affect the things that you can affect. You cannot control the things you cannot. So if I can fix the soil, make the vines happier, then at least I can take some of that variance out, because I know that somewhere over here something else is going to change. Mm-hmm. Right? We might get leafhopper damage, which will change photosynthesis, or we might have a cool flowering season, so we have shatter, less fruit. I can't do anything about that. I can't go out and globally change my vineyard's weather, right? So all you can do as a vineyard manager is really control as much as you possibly can, because you're accommodating for the variance that you can't control by saying, okay, well, at least I've at least I've taken out some issues that I know I can deal with, because if I had all of those issues, that'd be a complete nightmare. Right. And then I would not be confident in the quality of the fruit. But if I can control as much as I possibly can through that little sort of ecosystem, then if anything gets thrown at me, then we can handle that on a case-by-case basis, because it may vary from vintage to vintage. But at least we feel like it won't be a major disruption. If that answers it.
Yeah. So, on a lighter note, do you have any traditions that you do at the beginning of harvest, during harvest, as a winery or as a family? Or as a family winery?
Freak out, yeah. Freak out, get everything ready. No. I think it's really, when we get ready to harvest, and it's sort of morphed over the years, because you remember when we started, we were a vineyard. From basically 99 till 2009, we sold 100% of our fruit off. So it was always about manicure, make sure that everything that leaves this property is perfect, picture perfect. Because we knew as a family that was the last time we were going to touch that fruit. And so when that fruit hits the wine, the crush pad, it's no longer in our control. So I'm not saying we're control freaks, but there's just nothing we could do at that point. So that was always our focus. So it was like habitually, okay, we're getting ready to pick. Do we need to go through, do any passes to drop any ugly fruit off? Should we strip some leaves so we can get the fruit easier, and all these kind of things. Now you add the component of us making wine. So we've got all of that going on. And then at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, now I have to cater to the clients that have specific needs. We want it to look perfect. And then the stuff that I'm bringing in, I want both of that. But so how do we juggle all these balls, right? So
you have no time for that glass of champagne or that big team lunch or...
No, exactly. I know. So I get envious of watching all my friends pouring champagne in their grapes, or those kind of things, thinking, yeah, that would be so cool. No, we don't do like a big, we should do like a big pizza party.
Or no shaving for harvest for good luck. Or no time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, no showers for a week. That's so cool.
So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Jerry Lewis. I actually wrote a letter saying,
Really?
Yeah, I want to replace you. I think I stumbled upon geology when I was in high school. It was the one science that, to me, was not boring, nor did it make any sense, like biology and physics and all that stuff. What the hell? But geology, all of a sudden, it just felt really grounded to. Sorry for the pun. I just felt connected to it. And so when I took my first geology class in high school, I just excelled. And it was also, I think, really cool for me because I went to a really tough school. And
I'm familiar, as I went to the same school a few years before you.
So they have a, so
we have that in common.
You can speak to the, it's tough. It was
very rigorous.
It was not an easy school. And I struggled. My grades weren't up to snuff. And I had this teacher, Wendy Van Norton, who basically I took this geology class from, and I basically went from a student that was suffering to A's. And I think it was well timed because that it was like, we talked about aha moment with wine. It was the aha moment with a class, with a teacher that all of a sudden got me out of my shell, made me realize I could excel in school, and it put me in a great place. And I actually got the Lamar Trotty Jr. Award at my graduation, which is for most improved academic excellence throughout my entire high school career, because I went from suffering to A students by the end of my high school career. And I think because of that fulcrum, that moment when I took that class with Wendy, that all of a sudden I was like, hey, wait a minute. I can do this. I like this science. There's actually classes that I like, and opened up my eyes a little bit. Wow. So I think, I felt comfortable with it. And after taking that class, Wendy and I did what they call it? It was like an independent study. And I did like a mineral survey of the greater Los Angeles area, right? That sounds fun. I mean, basically gave me an excuse to drive off-road and like find rocks, and she would tell me like, oh, you should check out here, you should check out here, and I'd go out. It's kind of like a what they call it, treasure hunt. But I'd go around to various places like Pasadena and find tourmaline, find slick and slide rocks, and I'd go around and that's what kind of fed me and built up on that. So when I find a subject that I love, I commit to it. And I think the same thing happened when my folks bought the ranch, and I jumped into winemaking and said, I love this. This is great. I can commit to this.
Well, isn't it funny to think that if your dad hadn't bought this property, he'd still be a geologist playing with rocks?
Exactly. Yes. I don't know. I would probably be working for the government somewhere. I don't know what I'd be doing.
So when you're not working, and I know you're a very busy guy with 2 young kids, what do you do in your free time?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
What is free time? I know. Is it that time that I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep? Yeah, I mean, definitely my free time is my kids right now, their sporting activities and all that kind of stuff. But I've always, my guilty pleasure is welding.
Really?
Yeah, so I have a whole welding setup, MIG welder, and and I love welding. I think it goes back to like my loving to play with Legos when I was a kid and just building random stuff. And so the idea like I can do it on a bigger scale and fuse things together is so cool. Just tack things and weld them.
Welding.
Yeah.
What a fun hobby.
It is, yeah. So, but it's not something I get to do all the time, but I have the setup. And so there's that. And then the other thing that I don't have a huge passion for, but I'm going to have it, is my father, when he passed away, had a 1947 MGTC. And we're gonna fix that thing up. My son and I are gonna fix that thing up, because it's just a very simple car to work on, but it's like, to us, it's like this great memory. And so maybe I'll be welding on that too. See?
Wow, very exciting.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm trying to carve out time for that between soccer and baseball, and then harvest and all that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Well, hopefully you're able to also carve out a little romantic time with your wife. And if when you're able to do that, what sort of wines put you guys in a romantic mood?
What is a romantic mood wine? So we had our anniversary on August 8th, which is our 11th anniversary, and we stayed down at the El Encanto in Santa Barbara. And I do not drink a lot of champagne, but there was a bottle in our room, and we both enjoyed that very much. And I think we'll probably have more of that for our romantic evenings.
It sets a mood.
It's also because it's like something that neither of us know a lot about. So she doesn't have to worry about me getting all like analytical about the wine and being like, oh, this is too tannic. This is, like, shut up and drink it, Mike. And that's the thing. Like, I can't really critique it because to me, I don't make it, so I don't know that much about it. I know like good champagne. I know that. But that's when I become more like a consumer. It's funny because I look at it, I'm like, I'm moving with price on this one. So it was fun to do that, to sort of get out of my own shell and be like, well, let's try this because I'm not really that well versed in it. Yeah. So I would say probably definitely more sparkling wines. But God, what else? If I were to drink, I think that's probably a good enough answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you drink a whole bottle and you may not remember what else you're drinking. Right, yeah, So what is one of the best pieces of advice that you've received, and from whom?
Yeah, so when I was at UC Davis, my professor, Linda Besson, who I spent a lot of time with in various classes, I also was a TA for her on one of the labs. But I just have this memory of, sitting down in her office, chatting with her, and you're talking to somebody who extremely intelligent, has done so many different lab experiments and all this with wine. and has been doing it for so long. And she retired shortly after we had this conversation. But to have somebody who had so much experience, so much wine, and in a scientific fashion, still have passion about wine. To me, I don't think it was a direct thing that she said to me, but it was her demeanor and her ability to look at me and encourage me to do things. And the conversation revolved around, I had a wine that I had made commercially prior to going to Davis that was throwing tartrates. And I was like, I don't understand that. And so we were talking about it. Oh, okay, come to find out it's just a simple instability of, tartaric. We have to cold stabilize it. You learn about all these kind of things. But in that conversation, I started talking to her like, oh, hey, is there like a job like that you could be like a wine detective? Like you go out and research wines that are false, and she was like, oh yeah, you could do this and you could do that. And like she was explaining all these things. And so it got me to the point to realize that somebody who has been doing this for so long still has passion and still willing to push people in that direction. It gives you like a really good hope in your heart that you're like, wow, there's room for me in this industry. There's a future for me in this industry, but also like I could do this for a long period of time and not get bored. Because here I'm talking to somebody who's been doing it for eons and is extremely still, passionate about it. So I don't think it was a direct thing that was said to me, but it was an emotion and it was a confidence that was installed upon me by this professor. That I was like, this is it. This is a good foundation for me to pursue what I'm doing.
So if you could put into words some advice, what kind of advice would you give our listeners today?
Oh, my advice is from one of my dad's moves, right? Uh-huh. See your future, be your future, right?
That's pretty simple and straightforward.
It is, and it's it was done in a very comical way in Caddyshack, but I have a keychain that says that now, and it means a lot to me because every day when I get up, there are daily tasks, but then there's like I always think, how is that gonna fit in the big picture? Where, so to give you an example, I have a pipe that breaks. Okay, I have to go fix it. Right now I have a main line that cracked. Okay, I'm not just gonna fix it. Can I fix it to make it better? Should I put an extra valve in there to stub off to the future? Should I, at this point, since I'm shutting off the water, should I fix other things? So there's all these little moving parts that you think about, or, about that one little thing, because you're thinking about what can I do to make things easier for the future, but also prepare for the future. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I kind of mean, like, see your future, think about where you're going with it, and then have the guts to be able to execute on that later on. So in 2 years' time, when I'm like planning a block, I'm like, luckily I got a valve right there, we're gonna go. So it's like so that's kind of that's what I think is probably really sound advice is just always kind of keep in mind the bigger picture. It's so easy for us to get bogged down by the everyday stuff and just be like, oh, I got so much stuff to do. Like I drive my wife nuts because every about 4 months I pull everything out of the winery and then put it all back. And it's basically to take wines that were bottled recently and put them toward the back of the case goods so I can put the stuff that's older, that's selling now, in the front. Right. Because when I bottle, it sits in front. Now I got to move it to the back. But like everything comes out, it all goes back. So again, it's like it's like understanding in the future I will need that. I won't need that for a while. I need this now. So I'm being my future right now by taking what I need to sell and putting that stuff that I'm going to need later on in the back. So
when you look back at your career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date in your work?
Oh, proudest achievements. I think Ballard Canyon and me being really a focal point on that is something I'm extremely proud of. Having the ability to enter into the pages of every sommelier, every student of wine now has to be exposed to Ballard Canyon in some way, shape, or form. That's huge to me. It's like, it's almost like when you Google something and, it shows up on Wikipedia. I feel like that's what happened when we created Ballard. It's like, oh, we're recognized. We're legit. So and everybody can see that, and that's huge to me. So I think that's really an important piece.
I think that's a pretty good accomplishment.
It is, and I'm very proud of all the wines I've made to date.
Sure,
no doubt, and I'm very proud of my kids and my.
But I said work.
I know, exactly. So now we're talking about work. So yeah, I would definitely say that. But going back to what I just said, seeing my future, I'm hoping that will be replaced when we actually open our state winery.
Yes.
And that's still going forward. It's got we got approval. We submitted plans to the county. We're waiting for those to come back. So it's like, hey, that'll be hopefully a bigger and more vibrant feather in our cap.
Well, I'm looking forward to that because I know it's been a big fight for you to be able to get the permit. So I'm cheering you on that your biggest accomplishment after the Ballard Canyon AVA will be building that winery.
Yeah.
Complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like...
a desert island.
Now, I want you to imagine a situation. We're sitting here. Imagine we're sitting at a table drinking your wine. And, the paparazzi are outside snapping photos because they're really impressed with who's drinking the wine with us.
Right.
If there could be anyone from any walk of life sitting at the table drinking wine with us, who would you want that to be?
Oh, who would I want to be recognized as enjoying my wine? Without getting political, someone like Barack Obama would be super cool. You take somebody who is important as a president, ex-president now, but has a lot of clout. Always seem to have a pretty cool demeanor, and is not what you would picture as a normal wine taster or a wine drinker to some extent. I mean, I think a lot of times you saw him drinking beer. So that'd be kind of fun. And I'm not doing that just because of politics. I think just somebody that pops in my mind.
Sort of an icon.
Yeah, somebody I think I look at as a leader, and you could admire that. And I would want somebody like that, who you could admire, and who almost like, when you listen to him speak, there's you always have this really. I found myself always smiling when he talked, whether he was talking about stuff that I really care less about, but you always kind of find yourself smiling, and I think that that's something that's really contagious, and I would like to see that. So
we're almost finished here, and I just want to test you here. If you had to go to a deserted island, what 3 wines would you take with you?
What 3 wines would I take to the deserted island? Something to keep me hydrated, probably a nice Sauvignon Blanc.
From anywhere in particular?
I'm still kind of partial to Sancerre, the flinty character, but I still find it very refreshing, nice acidity. So when I get that parched lip that I'm dying on the island, that would be good to drink. I would probably have like a Chateau Yquem, just because A, I love sweet wines, and B, like, if I know I'm gonna be stuck on this island for a long time, that's a wine that'll age for a long time. Right. So it's something that would keep me company for a while, like the Wilson, like. But and then third wine, and I'm on this island alone. Probably La London from Gigal. Specifically the 2005 vintage that I worked at the winery, because I had an aha moment with that wine. That was the first time that I A, made wine in France, B, worked on 100% whole cluster, and when we brought that fruit in, I actually helped harvest it, and we brought that fruit in and put it into the tank. I was doing the first pump over on it, and this is juice, fruit, and stems. And as I pumped it over, I was like, I smell a completely beautiful finished wine already. And I thought, wow, this is a wine that is complete. and right out of the gate. So I would probably want that.
Okay.
Just have to go trip down memory lane.
So just to finish that out, a lot of times we like to listen to music when we drink wine, or it puts us in a mood. Music puts us in a mood. Wine puts us in a mood. So with those wines, what genre or particular song or an artist or whatever would you listen to as you drink that 2005?
Yeah. So this is where a lot of people like look at me and like, what? I love like techno and dance music and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not the guy that's playing AC/DC at the winery, so I really like Rufus the Soul, so something, probably, there's a great song called Underwater, so that'd be perfect,
And what about the Chem?
Chem, yeah, you're starting to branch out here a little bit more classic. I'd probably go back to an oldie but goodie kind of thing. When I was young, I loved New Order. Uh-huh. So probably something from the Technique album. Just I don't know, Bizarre Love Triangle or something like that. Just just to hammer home that it's like an oldie but goodie.
And let's finish off with the Larner Estate Syrah Ballard Canyon.
That's a good one. So there you're looking at something that's contemporary, something that has some oomph to it, so I probably think of, I don't know, my wife kind of got me turned on to Joy Wave. Mm-hmm. And so I think something like that. It's got a little punch to it. It's contemporary. It's fun. It's jovial in a way. And so I sort of lean into that because I feel like that's kind of the way my Syrah is contemporary and jovial and fun and not mainstream.
Uh-huh. I like that. Yeah. Well, good job. See? Right. So, quick answer. What's at the top of your bucket list as a wine region that you want to visit next?
I definitely want to, I want to go to New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to Australia, I did not get to go over to New Zealand. So I would definitely want to visit New Zealand. And then I really want to go down to Chile. One of my best men at the my wedding is a winemaker in Chile, and I want to go down there and check it out.
Wow. So you got 2 places to go to. Mm-hmm. And for somebody who wants to come here and visit you, they can go to larnerwine.com to purchase wine and to learn more. But if they want to visit, where can they visit you?
So we've got the tasting room here in Los Olivos, which sometimes I even man, and that's on the corner here of Grand in Los Olivos. You can, through the website, you can actually email us to come visit us on a private tour of the estate in the vineyard, or even in the winery, either one. And I usually lead all those because I really just love to showcase what we do. And then hopefully within the next year and a half, you'll be actually able to book an appointment directly through our website to come visit us on the estate with production. So.
Oh, well, that's exciting. And of course, you're here in Los Olivos, which is charming and connected to a lovely little store that is also yours with a lot of cool little knickknacks and other local things. So definitely a destination when you're in Los Olivos. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of your worldly information. Lots of geeky wine stuff. So that was exciting for me. Oh. But thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.